The silence inside the funeral home felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. The air smelled of old flowers and polished wood, sweet and rotten at once. Everyone sat quietly, staring at a closed coffin at the front of the room. What no one realized yet was that the dead man was not inside it. I didn't even want to come to this funeral, but something pulled me here against my will. It felt like a warning I didn't understand yet. My skin kept crawling, like someone was standing too close behind me. That feeling never went away. Before the story goes any further, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and stay with Unblinking. Because stories like this only get darker as they unfold. You're going to want to hear what happens next. This isn't just a ghost story. This is about being watched when you think you're safe. The funeral director spoke softly about forgiveness and moving on. People nodded, pretending to listen, pretending to care. No one questioned why the coffin stayed closed. No one asked to see the body. That's when I noticed the chair in the back corner of the room. I was sure it hadn't been there when I walked in. It sat slightly apart from everyone else, facing the crowd instead of the coffin. Something about it felt wrong. A man was suddenly sitting in that chair. I didn't see him enter or hear footsteps. He wore simple clothes, not black, not formal, like he didn't belong at a funeral. He sat perfectly still. I tried to look away, but my eyes kept drifting back to him. His face looked calm, almost curious. Then, he slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. My stomach dropped when our eyes met. There was no anger in his expression. There was no sadness either. His eyes looked familiar, like I had seen them before. They looked like they knew me. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision. When I opened my eyes again, the chair was empty. My heart started pounding. Low and fast. I told myself I was just nervous. The service continued, but I couldn't focus on a single word. That's when I felt a breath near my ear. It was slow, steady, and deliberate. I did not turn around. A cold realization settled deep inside me. The dead man wasn't resting in the coffin. He was somewhere in the room, and he was watching who would cry. The moment that thought settled in my mind, the room's temperature dropped. People began rubbing their arms, blaming the air conditioning. But I knew that wasn't it. The silence changed, growing sharper, almost alert. It felt like the room itself was listening. A woman in the front row suddenly started crying louder than anyone else. Her sobs sounded forced, almost rehearsed, like she was afraid of being noticed for not crying enough. The sound echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the walls. That's when I saw the chair again. The man was back, sitting exactly where he had been before. His posture hadn't changed, and neither had that calm, patient expression. This time, he wasn't looking at me. He was watching the crying woman. Her sobs slowly faded, as if she felt his attention. She wiped her tears and looked around, confused and embarrassed. The man in the chair smiled slightly. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they've confirmed a suspicion. My chest tightened as I realized something terrifying. He wasn't watching everyone equally. He was watching reactions, measuring them. It felt like a test none of us knew we were taking. If you're feeling that tension right now, stay with Unblinking and don't look away, because this is where things begin to unravel. Every detail matters from this point forward. This story rewards attention, and it punishes distraction. The funeral director paused mid-sentence, his mouth still open. The microphone let out a soft screech and then went dead. He tapped it once, laughed nervously, and continued without it. His voice sounded thinner now, like the room was swallowing his words. A man 2 rows ahead of me stood up suddenly. He muttered something about needing air and headed toward the exit. The door didn't open when he pushed it. He pushed harder, panic rising in his movements. The handle didn't move at all. Not even a little. The man turned around, face pale, and laughed like it was a joke. No one laughed with him. That's when the whisper returned. This time, it wasn't just near my ear. It drifted through the room, low and calm, like a voice speaking underwater. I couldn't make out the words, but everyone could hear it. People began looking at each other, fear finally breaking through their polite masks. Someone asked who was speaking. No one answered. The man in the chair slowly stood up. Every muscle in my body locked as I watched him rise. He didn't walk forward. He didn't need to. His presence filled the room instantly. The whisper stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound, and deep down we all understood the same terrifying truth. The funeral wasn't for him. It was for us. The man took one slow step forward, and the lights flickered above us. No one screamed yet, but everyone felt it coming. Fear hung in the air like a held breath. Even the bravest faces had gone stiff and pale. He stopped near the front row and turned his head toward an older man sitting beside the aisle. The man's hands began shaking before anything was said. His breathing grew loud and uneven. It was like his body recognized the dead before his mind did. The whisper returned, clearer now, calm and controlled. It spoke the older man's name perfectly. The sound didn't come from one place. It came from everywhere. The older man stood up slowly, like he had been commanded. Tears streamed down his face as he started apologizing to no one in particular. His words tumbled out in broken pieces, admitting things that made the room recoil in shock. When he finished, the whisper stopped again. The man in the plain clothes nodded once. He reached out and gently touched the older man's shoulder. The moment his hand made contact, the older man collapsed to the floor. He wasn't screaming, and he wasn't breathing either. Panic exploded across the room. People stood up, shouting, crying, pushing toward the exits. The doors still didn't open. The windows wouldn't break. The building had sealed us inside. If your heart is racing right now, stay with Unblinking, because this is the point where fear turns into realization. This isn't random. This isn't chaos. This is judgment. The man turned his attention to the rest of us. His eyes moved slowly from face to face, lingering on some longer than others. Wherever his gaze rested, people began to shake. Secrets don't like being looked at. A woman near the center dropped to her knees before she was called. She begged through sobs, confessing things no one else in the room knew. The man listened patiently. When she finished, he stepped past her without a word. That's when I realized the worst part. Confession wasn't enough. Regret wasn't enough. Some sins were already decided. The whisper spoke again, softer now. It said the funeral would continue. And one by one, we would be seen. The man's eyes finally settled on me, and I felt my throat tighten instantly. It wasn't anger in his stare, and it wasn't mercy either. It felt like recognition, like he had been waiting for this moment longer than I had been alive. The whisper said my name. The same way a doctor reads a chart. Come. Said. My legs moved before I told them to, carrying me into the open space at the front of the room. Every step felt heavier, like the floor was pulling me down. I realized then that no one could refuse. Images flooded my mind without warning. Memories I had buried deep and never spoken out loud. Moments where I stayed silent instead of doing the right thing. Times I chose comfort over truth. The man watched as if he could see every thought clearly. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My chest burned with panic. Not because I was innocent, but because I knew I wasn't the worst one there. That thought made the fear even worse. Survival suddenly felt like a punishment. The man leaned closer, close enough that I could smell cold earth on his clothes. The whisper spoke again, softer than before, almost disappointed. It said, I would remember this day for the rest of my life. Then, he stepped back. The light snapped back to full brightness all at once. The doors unlocked with a loud click that echoed through the room. The coffin at the front creaked softly as if something inside had shifted. People didn't run right away. We stood frozen, unsure if the test was truly over. One by one, we began leaving in silence, afraid to speak. No one looked back. Outside, the sun felt too bright and unreal. Police lights arrived minutes later, but there were no bodies except the one meant to be buried. The records would say the service ended early due to medical emergencies. The truth stayed with us. I still think about the people who never walked out. I think about the chair in the corner that was gone when I looked again. And I think about how the dead man never followed us outside. If this story unsettled you, comment below and tell me what you think the funeral was really for. Share this with someone who believes secrets stay buried. And if you want more stories to watch back, stay with Unblinking. Because some stories don't end when the video does.